welcome to the shop. I'm glad you came by. This is sort of an introductory video, or a primary video, and it's going to be followed up by something a little more in depth, but I don't know how many of you watched the video where I compared the bevel up, bevel down planes, the number 62 Stanley, to some of the other ones. And one of the I think I was comparing the this plane to the Lee-Nielsen and to the Stanley and to the Sargent, the original Stanley. At any rate, one of the things that I did not like about this plane was the change in the handle design that they had on it. It's much more upright, so the angle of push is just slightly going down here. So when you're pushing, you're not you have to apply some pressure downward when you're planing, and so you're doing that at the same time you're doing that. And somebody saw that video and contacted me about a change that they had made in this handle, and that's what I want to talk to you about now. So I'm going to show you what came in the mail. Yang Ji, a viewer of mine, sent me this tote, and you can see how similar it is to this one, except there is a difference. So here's this one, and here's the one from Stanley. I'm going to put the new one in front of it, and you can see that it's a little lower than this, but it's also much more angled like an original Stanley. So it really effectively changes that angle of push that I'm talking about. So this is the piece that he sent me, and I had to do a little work in here. This opening here was a little tight going onto the plane, so I had to enlarge this opening. But that's all the work that I did with it. I didn't have to change the hole, as you'll see in some of the other ones, that I had to modify that opening for the barrel nut. But let me show you a little more about this piece. This new one that was sent to me, these little serrations, those are every layer that when they're printing this with a 3D printer, it's showing up as a layer. Now, as you'll see in another one with a different product, a different material, you can change the, or lesser or make larger these serrations here. But you can see them here as well. Now, the one thing that I wish he had done, I think he really did solve some issues. One thing that's interesting is this little slope down here. That was necessary because he was keeping to this size, but in order to angle it forward, he had to bring this back so that this wouldn't interfere by going too far forward. And you'll also see in these two, when I line them up, that this one from Stanley has much more of an arched top, and I do wish that he had done that. He could have easily just rounded down from here a little rounder. I think it would have been a little more stylized and not so flat. That being said, he solved the problem of the direction of the push, and so I'm really glad to have this. And I've talked to him about, you know, the possibility of sanding this. It fits really comfortably in the hand, as this one really doesn't. I have to say, Yang accomplished exactly what he set out to and solved this issue. Much nicer to use the plane in that direction. So you can see this was made by somebody with a home printer. Very nice. He solved a lot of issues. So this brings us around to a fellow named Cal Edley. He lives in North Carolina, and he's a 3D printer specialist. He sent me a little package of an assortment of different totes and knobs, and he sent me some other ones that he had printed. Now, he has access to some commercial printers, unlike most home printers, so these vary, and some of them can be very pricey if you went to a third party and had them made. They could cost up to as much as $50 for a knob, or $90 to $100 for the rear tote or handle. But I want to show you these, and I want to tell you a little bit about them. He sent me several, and they're not only different designs and styles, but they're also printed with different equipment and different materials. Now, the one I'm going to start with is it's an SLA print, and it's stereolithography, and they produce these translucent parts. It was printed on a Formlabs Form 3 printer using a durable resin, and you can see the translucency, the light going through it. It's not transparent, but it's translucent. The light will travel through it. That Formlabs printer I priced, and it costs around $3,500 just for the printer. So it takes about 4 hours to print a knob and 7 hours to print a tote. The knobs cost around $9 in materials and $18 in materials for the totes. Now, there's a difference in the costs of these, the costs that I'm going to give you in this are just going to be materials. So you have to figure that also some of these take 12 hours to print, so you might as well print 10 or 20 at the same time. There's a lot of hours in not only in the printing, but then there's another batch of hours that you have to wait for the cool down. Now, this first one that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to give you a little more description about. This is the stereolithography one. It had a few issues. It produced a very smooth and to the touch surface, but it feels, it's not mushy, it just feels that way. It doesn't feel as solid as some of the other ones, and this is a resin. Now, the second one that I want to talk to you about is done, it's called FDM prints, and it's a fused deposition modeling print. Now, all of these basically told me that he scanned his own personal collection of handles and knobs, and with a 3D scanner and a specialized structured light scanner, and you do multiple versions of it as you turn it around, and then you transfer it to a CAD process that combines them and prepares them for the printer. So that in and of itself took quite a bit of work. You have to hand it to him for his diligence and for the amount of time that he really put into these. But I did find distinctive difference in all three. So here is a front knob, and this is the fused deposition modeling that we talked about, FDM. These are black to distinguish, but you can change that. The color is not totally important, but here it is next to the resin, and it's a bit more crisp. It's very light. The very cool thing about this one was I didn't have to do any work in fitting it. You'll see a little further on that I had to do quite a bit of work in making this fit. Interesting. And these are printed on a raised 3D Pro 2 using carbon fiber. So it's impregnated nylon. It's nylon, but it's impregnated with carbon fiber. It takes approximately 4 hours to print a knob and 10 hours to print a tote. I'll show you the tote later a little bit in the video. So the knobs, like I say, are around $5 and $9 in material, but you could achieve similar results on most cheap home printers, and you get the cost way down to maybe $1 each. The third one, which is the selective laser sintering. Now, in case you wonder why I'm looking at this page, I have a lot of notes here, and there's more involved in all of this than I could even imagine. I've been reading to you several things and hoping I'm getting them right. This one is selective laser sintering, SLS prints, They're bright white. They're not translucent. No light will go through them. They're printed on an industrial grade SLS printer using nylon 11 powder. The parts are usually only printed in batches, since producing one can take the same amount of time as producing 20 of them. And a single run takes about 10 to 12 hours of print time. So, and then 12 hours to cool down. So you'd probably save a lot by doing a whole batch of them at a time. The knobs are around $4 each in materials, and the totes are about $8 in material. But the printers are generally only accessible in industrial settings, so you have to take that into consideration. A tote, if ordered from a 3D printing service, might cost you as much as $90 to $100. So that's important. Let me show you some of the things I had to go through to make them work. The nylon is the one, the resin is the one that we're going to start with. And I did have to do a lot of work on it, but I did find that the material could be sanded. That was nice, but it's still kind of sticky and not my favorite. But let's get to it. Still a gap there, so I need to do some work on bringing it further down. I've drilled the hole and that seems to work okay. It's not tightened down completely because I don't think it should have to be forced, but let me play it by ear and we'll see how that fits. It is taking quite a bit of fidgeting to get this one to fit well. Here you can see the bottom of this is the resin one, and you see it's sort of blobby. It's not flat, and that's why, in order to make it fit, I've got to do some sanding. In order to flatten this bottom part out, because that's what's preventing this heel from touching, so I'm just using this 120 grit sandpaper and just knocking off the bottom of that. Applying a little pressure, same way I would plane it. And it's a little better. I mean, we'll try it out and see. So here's the number 5. Newer model. And this front tote fits that larger ring. Actually feels pretty comfortable, but it's a little spongy, this material, but it works. So if this is an alternative to having a broken handle, I would say it's a fair one. The high knob, just tuning it back a little bit and taking a finer shaving. But there, it's not bad. It fits the hand well. I did have to sand in here to get that down flat. The hole through the tote was fine, and the hole through the knob was fine. But this knob, even though it's high, will not fit an earlier, smaller, other than the 5. It seems to fit the 5 fairly well. Probably, I'm guessing, the 5.5, the 6, and so forth. But it's too large for the 5.25, and it's too large for the 4. And this is the part that I'm talking about is too large at the bottom there. It won't go in this ring, this cast ring. So pay attention to that. So this is the nylon low knob, which is still a little larger than the original, and the older style tote. Very tight in here, but fits, and the lateral adjuster moves. This is not as spongy as the resin prints of the handles. It's a bit more sturdy. I have a feeling it'll get dirty very easily, but since it's nylon, you could probably clean it. But it feels proper and seems to fit nice. You could tell everybody it's faux ivory. I don't know. Here's another problem that I found. This is on the nylon 2 SLS prints, and it's supposed to fit a 5 through an 8. This is a number 6, but I can tell that the two knobs, let's see if I can hold them up here, are not exactly the right height, the same height. This high knob is probably 3/16 taller than this one. So when you put this on and you snug this down, the brass winds up nice and flush there. But when you do it with this one and you try to tighten it down, what you wind up with is, as you'll see as I get this brass snugged, too much slop there. And it's a little too small for the casting at the bottom. So this one fits and doesn't move. This one slops around. So I think we have to go back to a number 5 to fit this one. I only had one high knob, number 5, to try these on, so I had to switch them out between the resin and the nylon. And but these are the other totes with the tall knob rather than the short that I tried on the 4, and it feels pretty good. It's a little coarse, but I think it can be sanded lightly. It's not smooth, but the fit of the handle is good, and it tightens up well. The bottom I had to do a little bit of sanding, not much, much less than the resin. The resin requires a lot more. But this is a fair replacement for broken totes and knobs. Pretty nice. Let's go on to another one. These are the FDM prints, the carbon fiber nylon, and little rough spots on it and little ridges. And I imagine that could also be sanded down, but those are the layers as it lays down in the 3D printing. The fit was good. I didn't have to drill out the top of the handle. There was no fitting to do. It went right on, and that was nice to see. The tall knob feels good. That little rough surface kind of gives you a nice grip, but I think I would try to smooth it out a little bit. They feel good. No major issues. So now we have to decide what's good or bad. I like the look of the black ones better than the others, but we have to play with them and see. And like I say, you have to make sure you get the right ones for the right plane you have. Not only the size of the plane, because the designs are different of the casting, but also the type of it, earlier to newer, because those tended to change. Those fittings changed over the times as well as just the size of the plane. So you have to be aware of both. But it's interesting, I think. It's a good way of taking care of replacing a broken knob or something that's cracked and you can't use anymore. Who's to say it's bad? Probably not good on a collector's scale as far as, you know, keeping to the original. But if you're a craftsman, woodworker, these will definitely take the force that you need. To sum things up, if you've got a bunch of broken handles or totes, or you don't like the feel of a certain tote, and you have the capacity to redesign one that works better, or you just like the idea of trying these out. Here's the resin. Another one, the nylon. The carbon fiber on number 5 looks good. You have some choices, and that's always nice. It's always nice to have choices. A great many of us for years have re-glued pieces of rosewood on, but rosewood is protected and it's getting more difficult to get. Some people are using different colored woods and just chopping off the top of a tote and doing a maple piece. All of these things are valid, or just using the planes as they are. But it's nice to see that there are more choices. The resin, the nylon, or the carbon fiber in the nylon. It's just more options. And in any case, more options is always better. So anyway, I know there's a lot more to this whole thing than I've just kind of scratched the surface of. But I hope I've given you maybe an introduction to it, maybe heightened your curiosity about buying a 3D printer, thinking of the different things that you can do with it. I imagine that you could probably make an entire plane 3D printed. Probably not the iron, because it'd be hard to sharpen enough. But the rest of it, why not? It's an amazing tool, and we should take advantage of every tool we have. Speaking of that, I want to thank you for joining me in the shop, and I hope this has been interesting, not too dull, and I hope you've gotten something out of it. I have. Thanks again for coming. See you later. This entire toy was 3D printed. All the different layers.